Hello, everyone. This is David Ellis and Lainey Leonton, and we're going to be streaming live tonight. And we're going to be looking at Toxic Relationships Part 3. Lainey, what do you have in mind?
Well, it's nice to be here in person and not like on little squares. So it's nice to, have some human to human context. But yeah, no, I don't follow, current events or anything. I really don't watch the news. So then I'd heard, like, we'd done those 2 episodes on the toxic relationships, and you nicely, had those clips of how to identify someone who's a narcissist or sociopath or a psychopath, and to help people be able to see the signs so that they can then protect their loved ones or protect themselves. So then, I had my adult daughter. She's like, "Oh, did you hear what's happened with Johnny?" And I was like, "Johnny Depp." And I was like, "No." And so then I started looking into it, and there's so much information. Like, this has become so public, where it's basically, a raw footage of seeing what we were talking about in action, like watching it unfold and listening to audio clips of, the gaslighting and different techniques that we talked about in the previous episode. So I thought it'd be really cool to come on. Well, not cool because what's going on isn't cool, right? But just good to come on and take a few of those clips and kind of use this unfortunate situation, that's in the public eye, to talk to that a little further and give some real life, hearing someone using these tactics, and just discuss, that this affects so many people, even celebrities. And the other thing I thought was important is oftentimes when someone thinks of a toxic relationship, they always think of the woman as the victim. And, I don't want to take sides in this because only they know what truly happened. We just have little snippets that we can get a glimpse into what happened. But men are affected with toxic people too. It's just, and I find that men do not get the help that they need. They oftentimes do not come out with this situation because it feels demasculating. It feels, like it's taking away their manhood to admit that, someone is affecting them in a negative way. They're supposed to be that stereotypical strong, person. So for them to come out and be vulnerable in a way and say, hey, someone's doing these things to me and I'm an abuse victim is rare. So I think for that reason too, I felt it important to, draw attention to this case that's kind of unfolding in a very public way, because there needs to be more voice to the men out there that are in these relationships as well. So that's kind of why we're here. And I do think with a lot of things, like I said, I don't really partake a lot in news. I don't partake in things like that because there's so many distractions right now. So this is, I don't want to add to that, because I talk a lot about going inward, right? Doing that meditation, looking after yourself, doing that self-advancement of, your spiritual progress. So these kind of things out there are very detracting from that. But at the same time, it's good to take note of certain things because we can always learn things, right?
Absolutely. You made some very good points there. The first point that I want to touch on is the fact that we did toxic relationships, but a lot of people, they are usually externally focused. And so we're actually going to be doing tonight, looking at the Johnny Depp trial. The reason why we're going to be looking at that is because if you can't spot certain things in your own relationship, a very public relationship like the Johnny Depp trial will probably help you to understand toxicity in relationship, how it develops and so on, how a clinician is going to diagnose how you or your loved one is behaving, the criteria that they're going to use, and to be able to see real and live. Now, this story is a very horrific story. And as Lenny said, not only women are affected by that stuff, men are also affected by that stuff. And this trial really does bring to light. And I think it's very important that we say that toxic people, it's not a matter of gender or age or race or anything like that. It's toxic people are toxic people. Some of them are born that way, some of them are made that way. And so what we want to stress is not so much the toxicity of people, but your ability to detect it. Now, I understand that a lot of you may not have psychological training, but you know when something is wrong, it's instinctively. So we want to speak to that as well. Using your intuition, you don't need a diagnosis for that, okay? But what we want to do is make it clear to you tonight how you can spot certain behavioral patterns. And if you spot certain behavioral patterns and you have this thinking that says, it'll get better, it won't. A lot of the times, 9 times out of 10, it won't, especially if your loved one has some sort of mental illness or some sort of behavioral problem, which they actually need to get some help for, okay? Now, everybody's going to be watching this broadcast will have met somebody, would have met somebody, unless you're extremely sheltered. You would have met somebody who is toxic in some way, shape, or form. And what we want to do is minimize your exposure in the future by giving you tools, tips, tricks, and diagnoses and analyses that you can use to spot problems before they actually become a real problem, which I want to say something here actually, because we want to dedicate this episode tonight to Donna Kruger.
Yeah.
Our mother.
Yeah, I had the opportunity. We went to ZZ Top last night. That was pretty amazing.
You went to ZZ Top last night?
Mm-hmm.
How was that?
With Donna. It was really good.
The jealousy.
Really good.
The jealousy.
Yeah.
Donna, if you're watching this, how come I don't get invited to ZZ Top?
That was me that did the inviting.
So, guys, we just want to dedicate this episode to Donna Kruger, The Broom Closet. For those of you who are going to be watching this either live or in post, you should really check out Donna's store.
I have a room there.
You have a room down there, correct?
Yes. So I work out of the broom closet as well. So
best employment ever. And so just check out Donna's store. She has lots of supplies there, witchy supplies, and esoteric supplies. I shop there. And also check out a business partner who makes merchandise like clothing line, Jessup's General Store, Carly. Okay, so you want to step right into it?
Yeah, let's get started with this unfolding of this.
So we have a bunch of videos queued for you. Actually, there's 3 of them, but they will help you to understand what is going on with this trial. I queued it so that you just get the meat of the matter. So I'm going to share my screen first of all, and then we will get rolling. Oh, this is going to be fun.
This is a way that we essentially, that psychologists, psychiatrists, anybody in the mental health field thinks about a disorder. It helps us to communicate a set of symptoms that a person is experiencing. And along with that set of symptoms, it tells other professionals a lot about how those symptoms might have developed, how that person might behave, perceive the world. It also drives treatment. The real purpose is to determine what sort of interventions will be most effective for the person.
Yeah. So what this psychologist, and she's a credit to her profession, she withstood a lot of difficult questioning by the lawyer. The lawyer was trying to put words in her mouth, and she absolutely withstood a lot of stuff. So what she's doing here is basically giving the court some background as to how she arrived at a diagnosis, which she shouldn't theoretically have to be, but she's proving herself to be an expert witness.
Previously, you made reference to, I think you called it the DSM-5. What's
Yes.
that?
So the DSM-5, that stands for the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, version 5. And that contains every diagnosis we use in mental health. And it's the authoritative manual of mental diagnoses.
Is performing diagnoses something you typically do in your line of work?
Yes.
Thank you. So you referenced two personality disorders. What's a personality disorder?
To understand a personality disorder, I think it can be helpful first to kind of define personality. So personality, something we take for granted, but these are the traits, the characteristics, the way we think, we feel, and we act that make us who we are. And these traits are pretty stable over time and across situations. We might, be sure to mind our P's and Q's when we're meeting somebody new. But overall, if somebody were to describe us or if we were to describe ourselves, we have a pretty good sense of who we are. Sometimes an easy way to think of it is imagining how you might describe a brother or sister or a child if you have children. Their personalities are pretty clear to you. A personality disorder is some sort of dysfunction in those enduring traits. So as opposed to other types of mental illness, when you think about something like depression, that's episodic. It comes and it goes. And when it's treated with medication, it can pretty much be completely mitigated or minimized in a person's life, and their personality is still there, separate from the depression. When we have a personality disorder, there are going to be disturbances in several different areas that are visible in almost all different facets of it.
So, Lainey, what I really like about this is they're showing side by side her reactions with what the psychologist is saying. And so her reactions speak volumes if you're a body language person. Okay. Now, this is not control we're seeing. What we're seeing is a lack of emotion.
Yeah.
She's, for want of a better word, losing this case, right? But she doesn't have enough of a grip on herself, enough of a grip on herself. So you could say, well, she's just maintaining composure. No, that's actually a lack of emotion.
Yep.
Is there a manner in which personality disorders are commonly diagnosed?
Yes, so they can be diagnosed in a treating environment. Treating psychologist or a therapist or a psychiatrist simply does a diagnostic interview, which involves assessing multiple areas of a person's history back down through childhood.
I'm going to stop you for a second.
Yes.
What's a treating environment?
Sometimes I'll slip into these words. I apologize. So a treating environment in therapy, if somebody is going in for treatment, the mental health provider will ask some questions to find out what sort of symptoms they've experienced and what sort of things have occurred in their life that might be consistent with these disorders, or rule out these disorders, prove that there's no reason for these disorders to be considered. They might also pay attention to their observations of the client over time and new information the client provides them. The most reliable way, however, to ever come about a diagnosis really is through a comprehensive psychological assessment. And I might use the words assessment.
I gotta say something here. I don't know who her lawyer is, but oh my God, wow. Her body language is not good. No. And her body language is not good throughout this entire trial. And I'm like, do you want them to rule against you? The lawyer gave her good points. And from a legal standpoint, she's dressed the part, but her body language is not correct. She is very disinterested.
Yeah, very disconnected and kind of in her own little world.
And aloof.
Yeah.
And she doesn't care.
Testing interchangeably, they all mean the same thing. It's combining information from multiple different sources. One main source is psychological testing using validated objective measures That means that they've been tested, they've been shown to be accurate for testing what you want to test, and in the environment you're testing. So there are measures specific for court environments where someone might respond differently. You integrate that with the same interview I was telling you that people would do for therapy. We do that as well. And then in a courtroom setting, you're going to look at all the legal records, all of those documents, corroborating information to sort of check your hypotheses that may be developing, and also check against the examinee's statements to confirm whether you have enough evidence of a certain diagnosis.
So what's a clinical interview?
A clinical interview is a very comprehensive interview. It includes a person's entire life history, as well as very specifically looks at any symptoms they might have. This can start as far back as birth. You might find out if there were any issues with their delivery, any genetic issues, any intellectual issues. How did they do? What was their home life like? How was discipline handled? What's their relationship with their primary caregivers? Were they raised by an aunt, an uncle, their parents? How many siblings do they have? How do they get along with their siblings? How many times did they have to move? Was there any abuse? Did they have any really significant life experiences that come to mind when they think about their childhood? How were they as a student? Did they need special services? Did they get in trouble at school? And you do this, you continue on high school. What were their hobbies? Did they play sports? How many friends did they have? Did they have any trouble keeping those friendships? Then you get into adulthood. Did they go to college? Did they not go to college? How come? What sort of jobs have they held? How did those jobs go? How did they end? That's always an important question. What sort of romantic relationships have they been involved in? How do they identify sexually, culturally? Let's see, what else? What sort of symptoms have they experienced? You go through the entire gamut of some of the main symptoms. You might screen for depression, any disorganized thinking. That means thinking that isn't necessarily in touch with reality, and any current distress they may be having today.
How did you conclude that Ms. Hurd suffers from the personality disorders that you identified?
So there was information that supported it from multiple sources. I conducted testing, including one of the main tests that I used. She obtained scores that were consistent with those diagnoses. And then I also, there was evidence of those diagnoses in her records and in her self-report.
Okay.
All right, Council, why don't we just go ahead and pause for a second while we go ahead and take our morning recess. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and take our 15-minute morning recess. Do not discuss the case and do not do any outside research, okay?
Okay, this is the end of the first clip.
I think we missed just before that beginning because we got talking and it had her diagnosis of what she had legit diagnosed her with.
So here is the thing that she was diagnosed with. She was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder.
Right.
So now what is BPD? BPD is a personality disorder which is characterized by fear of abandonment. People who have BPD, they act out a lot. They're going to be prone to sudden fits of rage. And it's because they're afraid that people will leave them. And in the next clip that we're going to show you, we have actual recordings of the conversations between her and Johnny Depp. And what you're going to see is evidence of BPD. So the psychologist didn't necessarily need to spend how many hours she spent with her, right? Because it's actually just there on the audio recordings, right? And you will see how she came to the conclusion. Now, histrionic personality disorder, very big word. What does that mean? People who have histrionic personality disorder need to be paid attention to, okay? They look for validation everywhere, right? So I believe in the second broadcast that we did, we talked about sociopathology, right?
Right, yeah.
So people with histrionic personality disorder, what they do is they act out a lot and they seek attention. So people like that, what they do is they actually try to make themselves seen. anyhow they can. The histrionic personality disorder is the kind of person that would do stupid things just to be seen. And so what that means is that everybody must pay them some kind of either compliment, some kind of attention. And if attention is not paid to them, they will lose their minds. Okay, they will throw tantrums and stuff just to be seen. And I think, from my personal opinion, her diagnosis was the lightest possible diagnosis that she could make. I think she's being conservative with the diagnosis because Amber Heard, in her recordings, it tends to suggest sociopathy and psychopathy in there. And she did not go that far because probably she thought there was not enough evidence, right? But there certainly was a lot of evidence to support that diagnosis. Okay, and I think if you had second or third opinions. So she was diagnosed with BPD and HPD, which is histrionic personality disorder, because she certainly does like attention, and she certainly has a huge fear of abandonment, and she clearly has anger control issues, right? And we're going to actually go to the next clip if you have nothing to say.
And I think too, you can clearly see just him, because I'm not sure if we have a clip of that, but he was talking about how he would go from room to room to room to get away from her, right? So that in its own, he unknowingly was worsening her reaction, because him
The
just
BPT,
turning his
yes.
back and walking away from her to disengage was an insult to her. Like it was solidifying that abandonment.
Understood. Yes, people with those disorders, they make you not want to be around them. Like you feel relief when they leave, right? I once again, I think the psychologist's diagnosis is very conservative, because when you get into cutting off fingers and shitting in somebody's bed, wow,
Yeah,
that's a step up from HPD or BPD, right? That's a whole different level. That is bodily harm. And so what is very interesting is that in celebrity circles, you can do this stuff and get away with it. You can assault people. We just saw with the Will Smith issue. That's another toxic relationship that really should be examined.
yes.
But nobody has examined it. But anyway, you can assault people and get away with it, but cutting off somebody's finger, that's a whole different level. So we're going to get into the next video. I'm going to share my screen once again. And we're sharing.
Change how we do things, and I want to trust you, and I feel like all the trust is gone. All the fucking trust is gone in the relationship because you keep splitting.
I'm not going to be in a physical fucking altercation with you.
Then don't.
You fucking hit me last night. You fucking...
Or how the other times we split. Come on, you cannot act like that's about that. It's
Well,
not.
on a plane, I can't split.
No, and you hit back. So don't act like you don't fucking
I
participate.
pushed you.
I'm not going to get into the details of that fight. You and I both know that you split when there is no physical violence involved. And that you do it like at the very beginning of fights these days. And if you split and you go into a different room and you don't actually leave that house, it does nothing but perpetuate the fight. Really, when you split on me, how do you feel when I leave you?
When I split, when I
left you
go into
before.
the other room, you said. I
And
wouldn't go to
getting
the
me a
rooms.
room, getting another room in a hotel is just the same thing.
When did I get another room at the hotel?
You text Steven or Nathan in Toronto to get you another room. You don't even know what you're talking about. You still haven't even told me what it is, but run with it.
I have told you what it is.
No, you haven't.
I said to Travis, I said to you, hey, tell Travis what just happened.
You told me to do it. You
Yeah.
told me to. You said, go do that.
I said, no, tell him what just
And I
happened.
lied.
Okay, so here you're saying that she does have a problem when he leaves the room. Now, something was wrong in this part of the recording, but as you can, if you read on the screen, she's arguing for the reason why she hit him.
Mm-hmm.
That is a sick personality because clearly she has no concept of whether or not she should be hitting anybody, right? But she has nonetheless. So as we move on, you will see more of this kind of thinking as we move on.
You punched me in the
You're right.
fucking thing and you
You
spit
figured
in
it
the face
out.
and you said, no, fuck it. No, I didn't. What the fuck are you talking about? And I watched
punch
you
you.
lie. And then
I
I
didn't
said,
punch you,
and
by
then
the
I-
way. I'm sorry that I didn't hit
punched me.
you across the face in a proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched.
Don't tell me what it feels like to be punched.
No, even a lot of guys been around a long time. No.
No, when you fucking have a closed
You
fist.
get punched. You got hit. I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not fucking deck you. I fucking was hitting you.
You can't
I don't know
deck
what the full motion of my actual hand was, but you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you.
How are your toes?
What am I supposed to do? Do this?
How are your
I'm not
toes?
sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are.
Oh,
That's the difference
you
between
poor
me and
soul.
you. You're a fucking baby.
Because you start
You
physical
are
fights?
such a baby.
Because
Grow
you-
the fuck up.
Because you start
Joey.
physical fights?
I did start a physical fight.
Yeah, you did. So I had to get the
Because-
fuck out of there.
Yes, you did. So you did the right thing, the big thing. You know what? You're admirable. Every single time. What's your excuse? When there's not a physical fight, then what's the excuse there? You're still being admirable, right? Just by running away. And you can sit here and call me names, but you get called a name, and what do? That's the last insult. You're a baby. You're a hypocrite. You don't do anything that you actually do. You expect from people what you can't give them.
Okay, that was all different kinds of wrong.
Yep, and all sorts of tactics like we were talking about before. The whole, just the part that stood out to me in that part, and I know you have parts that you're going to speak to, but the deniability of the reality, right? Like the repainting that, well, I didn't hit you. Like he's saying you punched me, right?
Mhm.
And then she's saying, well, I don't know the position of my hand. I didn't punch you. I hit you. And maybe my hand was in the wrong shape, right? Like what? So a lot of these people will, when, they're faced with behaviors that they've done that were way over the top, they will try and rationalize, go into your head, make you doubt what happened,
Mhm.
kind of repaint like, well, you think it was a fist, but it wasn't a fist. And then make you feel, and then insulting. If that doesn't work to get him to back down from saying you hit me with a fist, then you're a baby, right? The
Mhm.
insults start. So she's just firing all different kinds of tactics at him and then challenging his manhood again by, oh, you're a baby. Like you've been in fights before, like just the way that she minimalizes what happened, makes him question what happened, and then insults his manhood, is just, there's so many layers to that is just her trying to get into his head and make him, I don't even know what the right word is for it, but there's so many tactics, and you could speak to the tactics because these are some of the tactics we're talking about. I believe it's called gaslighting, right?
It's called gaslighting, correct? It's also called projection.
Mm-hmm.
And so she went through a number of these tactics up there. The first tactic she used was something called a bombast. Now, one of these days, we was doing a broadcast on something called conversational terrorism. Conversational terrorism works like this. Say something, Lainey. I don't really want to hear what you have to say. That would be a conversational terrorism. Conversational terrorism, you say something, the person keeps interrupting you and cutting you off and cutting you off. The reason why they do that is because you're about to make a point.
Mm-hmm.
And so they cut you off, and it raises the frustration level in you because you realize that you can't speak, as an example. So that's something that is used in conversational terrorism, the interrupt, okay? Then she used something called ad hominem attacks. Like, say something, Lainey.
David, how are you doing?
The only reason you said that is because you're a narcissist.
Oh,
Right, this is an ad hominem attack.
right.
This is an ad hominem
Oh,
attack.
I'm sorry.
And so an ad hominem attack, literally the word translates to the man. So any opinion that you have, anything that you say that I don't like, it might be, how are you, David? I'm going to call you a name that is a derogatory name as a means of getting you to back down from your position.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be called a narcissist,
No.
right? Nobody wants to be called a baby. Nobody wants to be called soft or whatever else. And he's a man and he has probably ego issues. So yeah, that doesn't work for her. So she's going to attack him at points where she thinks he is going to back down from his position. And I'm sure everyone listening to this broadcast, what we just demonstrated here, you've been subjected to it at some point in time in your life, right? So she's using all the conversational terrorism tactics. And the last thing is called the bombast. Say something, Lainey.
How's the weather outside?
Why are you asking me that question? Why?
I don't like this.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. But it's fun, right? That's called a bombast. A bombast works like she says something and I immediately start raising my voice and shouting because I'm so annoyed and stuff like that. Everybody who's listening to this broadcast would have had something like this done to them. You see how it makes you feel?
Yeah.
Even when we're joking?
Yeah.
Even when we're joking, it makes you feel weird. Right? But these people live like that. They live like that day in, day out, and so on. So as I said before, I think the psychologist's analysis was very conservative, histrionic. Yes, she likes attention. And BPD, she didn't like when he kept walking away from her.
Yeah.
But that used to trigger her borderline personality disorder. But I would go so far as to say she's definitely a sociopath. And I'm wondering whether she's a psychopath because she's demonstrating absolutely no emotion at that trial, right?
And then when she does, it's kind of, I don't think we have a clip of that, but
No, we just saw it.
We talked-
It's condescending as hell.
yeah. Yeah.
She does not think that anybody in this trial is worthy of any kind of her. That's what the body language is speaking to me. That is telling me that there is no care and concern for anybody at that trial. And so this is basically how that works. And it's just sad to see these things. So guys, when you see these traits coming at you in relationships, especially in intimate relationships, right? Because there are men and women who are like that, right? Pay attention to them because they're leading you down a particular path. Now, the psychologist in the last clip said that they use a number of criteria to actually diagnose. But you didn't need a lot of criteria to diagnose people. But generally speaking, if they come from dysfunctional households, as we have said a million times before, if there's sexual abuse, if there's physical abuse and so on, it's not, people do rise above certain things. They do. And then some people don't. And as we said, it's easier to have a personality like Amber Heard's. Life becomes easy for you.
Yeah.
Life is difficult for normal people. They are. You don't realize how difficult life is. You have to navigate relationships. If you have a personality disorder or you're a sociopath, you just simply take a bulldozer and bulldoze your way through relationships.
Yeah.
You just bulldoze your way through relationships. You reduce everybody to willing supplicants to your ego. And I think she was trying to do this to this man. But we're going to get into the actual things that really damaged him in terms of his reputation and stuff like that. in a little bit, but we have one more clip for you. I'm just gonna pull it forward and run the clip. There's 11 minutes, but we're gonna try to get through and skip through.
Break, we were talking about how your finger got injured in Australia. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to pull up Defendant's Exhibit 394, please. Mr. Depp, do you recall Mr. Rottenborn showing you this exhibit during your cross-examination?
Yes, I do.
And can you please explain when, relative to your finger injury, you sent this text message?
That's the day before. Am I correct?
At the bottom, it says, I cut the top of my finger off. What should I do? Except, of course, go to a hospital.
Australia, exactly. The time difference, sorry. Yes. That's what I said.
And so when, relative to when your finger was injured, did you send this text message, to your best recollection?
This looks like it's at the time to me.
And in the middle here, it says, her obsession with herself is far more important. She's so fucking ambitious. She's so desperate for success and fame. That's probably why I was acquired, mate. What do you mean by that?
Unfortunately, I meant exactly what I said in this text. It seems it had become clear that there were she seemed to take more care and importance in going on auditions, going to the Met Ball or going to any sort of premiere or opening or whatever, where she could be.
Judge, we don't scope the question, Your Honor.
Sorry?
I believe he was responding to what he meant by what he wrote in his text message.
And then he
to
said
Dr.
again exactly what the word said. Now he's going to be.
All right, let's see, Judge. Next question.
Thank you, Mr. Rottenborn.
Sir, if you could just answer the question, Mr. Depp, please.
So,
Direct your
sorry.
attention just to your attorney, okay?
Sorry, Your Honor.
Mr. Depp, last week, Mr. Rottenborn showed you an audio recording where you referenced your finger getting cut off in Australia. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to play a different portion of that recording that came before the portion that Mr. Rottenborn played. So if we could please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 343, and we will be playing the portion from at 1 hour, 54 minutes, 11 seconds to 1 hour, 56 minutes, 10 seconds.
It's early, it's quick, it's so not, you're not interested in not fighting. You are guaranteeing a fight. When you do that, and I've told you this so many times, you guarantee it. If you were interested in not fighting, you would be respectful if you needed the space to make, you would be careful not to perpetuate the fight longer by saying, I need a few minutes, and then actually honoring that. How can I trust you that it will be a few minutes when you've done this in the past and disappeared for hours? You know, I got mad at you in Australia about this. I said, baby, I want to trust you. It's hard for me not to try and work it out. If you want to be the person that's like, I need to cool down, help me do that, give that to you. But I can't give it to you if you always let me down and fuck up and forget.
Because I give you a time limit, because I said I'll be back in 3 minutes. So I'm just.
No, it's
if that
different.
happens, if it happens,
It's different. You never,
if it happens, I'm just gonna say, look, I need some time. That's it.
I'm telling you, that,
So yeah, there's that diagnosis, right, of the abandonment, the whatever. But he has been, you can see how she has trained him. So he has to justify himself. She's upset with him because you always walk away from a fight. Like you're always walking away and you say you're going to leave and you say you're going to be a few minutes and then you're an hour.
When you're getting your fingers cut off, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right?
Tends to, yeah, I would
Yeah.
walk away as well.
Yeah. And so now he's having to justify and say, well, when that happens, instead of me saying, I'll be gone 3 minutes and being specific about a time amount, I'm just going to say I'll be back. So he's having to put himself in a position where he's, having to change his wording just so not to trigger her. And she's saying, you should not be leaving me because I don't know when you're coming back. And that makes me mad. And you're avoiding an argument and you're avoiding a fight.
I knew somebody like that once. So it's not only the way that this is not only the way it works. The other way it works is that you could be speaking to someone and the person says, I can't handle what you have to say to me. I'm very fragile. That also is a thing. People actually do that. And so you never get the chance to tell them anything if it is that they actually need to hear something from you. And so it can go either one or two ways. They'll be in a fight position with you, or they'll be in a, don't tell me anything I don't want to hear because, it will hurt my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Or could you change the way you're speaking to me because it'll hurt my feelings? But what they're secretly trying to do is stop you from telling them that they're wrong in some way.
Yeah, it's controlling and manipulative, trying to even insert what your thoughts should be or what your words should be towards them when maybe your words and thoughts are justified.
Mm-hmm. And it's insidious. And they try to train you out of speaking in certain ways. That's just what they do. And she tried to train him out of speaking in certain ways by telling him, and this is what we get back to the spiritual community. Have you ever heard a spiritual person says, don't tell me these things because it might trigger me? Oh my God, I hate that word. I hate that. That word has been prostituted so long.
Yeah.
I've said this on broadcast before. When you say that phrase, it might trigger me, you are assuming that you have a gun, but somebody else is pulling your trigger.
Mm-hmm.
You are the gun owner. The gun belongs to you.
Yeah,
Deal with the gun accordingly and put it in a cabinet. Lock it. Take the ammunition away from that gun. Keep it. You are responsible. You are the gun owner. Don't talk about somebody else is pulling your trigger.
Yeah.
If you want to put it in an analogy, that's what it is. That's basically what it is. So what she is telling him at this point is that if you do certain things, then there's going to guarantee that there will be an explosion because you're triggering me. Okay. The thing about it is that triggering people or triggering situations is a valid thing. People do in the news media and so on. They try to trigger you to feel a certain way or be angry about some things or whatever else. Okay. But holistically speaking, everybody's responsible for their own triggers. They should be, at least. And it's up to you to do the work that is necessary to put the gun away, right? Sometimes you can't, sometimes you can. But if you can't put the gun away and whatever is happening inside of you is so strong, then you are the one with the responsibility. The onus is on you to walk away. Make sense? Is that fair?
Yeah, but in his case, he can't walk away.
Yeah, because He can't walk away.
Like the,
It's not just,
I just,
it's the
I
levels
just-
of control that we're
Oh.
seeing. It's actually this is a serious matter, but there's some entertaining aspects of this because you can see clearly the manipulation that she's using. You can't escape. You must stay there, right? Because if you leave, there's going to be a fight. But if you stay there, there's going to be tension and your life is going to be made uncomfortable.
yeah, and if you end up leaving and splitting, then you're a baby and you're not a man.
It's hilarious. Like, that's actually a real argument she's using.
It is. It's yeah. So we'll carry on with that.
Make it worse.
No.
I guarantee you it will.
If you're stuck in throwing punches,
I'm not talking about throwing punches. I'm talking about an argument.
Wow.
right. In arguments, you tend to throw punches.
I'm talking about arguments. I'm not talking about the times when it's not physical. I'm talking about arguments. I'm talking about arguments. I'm talking about arguments.
Yes, in our arguments.
No, she's doing two things there. She's now striking whatever surface she's hitting
Mm-hmm.
to let him know that he's about to get struck.
Mm-hmm.
She's striking whatever surface to let him know that what he's afraid of, it's possible that it might happen
Yeah.
if he continues down that line.
Yeah. I'm not talking about hitting. And then she's like hitting
Hitting
something,
the desk.
saying, this is, I'm talking about.
And she's trying to program him to step down from a position when he's trying to have a logical conversation with her. When you meet people like this, there is no hope, you know. You gotta, you really do have to cut your losses with people like this because they don't see reason. They do not see reason. And he doesn't realize that he's just trying to have a logical conversation, not realizing you can't argue against certain people. You can't. But we're going to continue.
Earlier now, you split. You take off right away. You don't deal with the issue. You don't deal with the confrontation, and you split. Whether it is, and then you do it for an undeterminate amount of time. You do it without actually respecting. When you do give me a time, like say I need a few minutes, you never.
Mr. Depp, whose voices can you hear in that audio recording?
Myself and myself.
And there was a mention about Ms. Heard getting mad about something in Australia. What did Ms. Heard get mad at you about in Australia?
There were many instances where Ms. Heard would get upset, angry, and argumentative and violent in Australia. There were many times. The one that was the day when tip of my finger disappeared. That had to do with a phone call. When she arrived in Australia, she complained that an attorney who was explaining to her
Objection, Your Honor, is hearsay as to what he alleges her attorney was explaining to her. That's clearly.
We can move on, Your Honor.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
In the context of this audio recording that we just heard, what to your understanding is Ms. Heard referencing when she says you split?
I would excuse myself from the situation. I would try to get away so that nothing escalated. Because if given the chance to allow things to escalate, Ms. Heard would take it to the very extreme, which ended up with my finger being chopped off. So I rather have thought it was the best idea to avoid things like that.
Mr. Depp, I'd like to show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 272. I believe this is another document that you saw during your cross-examination? Do you recognize these text messages?
Yes,
And these were after your detox on the island, is that right?
that's correct.
Now, where it says here, this was the right thing to do to speed up the process, what are you referring to there?
When we were on the island and I was going through the process of detoxing from the opiates, which was a very unpleasant and powerful, painful process. It wasn't working with Miss Heard there. I could not properly detox, as every day was another problem or this or that. So I asked we leave the island and go back to Los Angeles, and I asked Ms. Heard if she would please allow me to get a bungalow at the Beverly Hills Hotel where she and her friends could go for, I needed 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, anything I could get where I could finish the detox by myself without any unnecessary interruptions or unpleasant interruptions. To which she replied that she was felt like I was throwing her out and abandoning her, and after all she had done for me. When the fact is, though, no matter what I wrote to her mother,
And that would support the BPD. That's
Yeah.
where the diagnosis was made.
Yeah.
and to her, I needed the time because I would have gone straight back to the pills. I would have not been able to detox properly without that time alone. And she reluctantly gave me the time. And I sent her and her friends to Beverly Hills Hotel and a bungalow, and went through the detox by myself in Penthouse 3 for the next 5 or 6 days.
Mr. Depp, last week, Mr. Rottenborn showed you a video that was taken of yourself where you're slamming some cabinets. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
First of all, where are you in that video?
That's
Okay. And I think that's it. And so we are back. And we are going to be talking about this. First of all, there's so many things to say here. The first thing I would like to say is her lawyer's name is Rottenborn. I want you to let me stop. Your lawyer's name is Rottenborn, Rottenborn, Rottenborn. A lawyer named Rottenborn. That's hilarious to me. Not only is his name Rottenborn, his line of questioning and his methodology of questioning is so primitive that it's like, it actually is kind of rotten, actually, because what he's trying to do is justify some of a behavior pattern and not prove his case, which is why he's probably going to lose this case, okay? And there's no justification that can be had for certain behavioral patterns. But there are a number of things which I find very, the other thing that I find very interesting about this trial is her body language is speaking volumes.
Yeah, I know. I almost wanted to pause it a couple times because, you know, even the words that he's saying, the audio that's being played, different instances like that, and she's just stone cold, nothing on her face. Just, you know, it's mind-boggling. Just watching her speaks volumes.
Yeah, I think from a body language, when she actually looks at them, when she actually looks at him, the feeling that I get from her is that she thinks she's better than everyone else in that courtroom. And you guys can go back to YouTube and look at the clips and so on, and you can just feel what I'm saying here. And I think, once again, I keep saying it, that diagnosis that the psychologist gave was the bare minimum of a diagnosis that could be given in that situation.
Yeah.
Because if she's going by the DSM-5 manual, she's just going by what will stick no matter who examines this person.
Yeah.
Because if she goes any higher, they might get a second opinion from another psychologist who say, no, she doesn't have this. But she definitely has HPD and BPD. She definitely has that. Anybody looking at her is going to see that immediately.
Yeah.
Okay. And hearing those conversations, wow, these conversations were all different kinds of wrong.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the elephant in the room. Maybe I should talk about the biggest elephant in the room. She shit on his bed. I don't know, lady. I don't know. I mean, like, let's talk about that.
That's a whole nother level, you know, and as much as, like, I wanted to speak to the fact that, you know, Johnny Depp has addictions, drug use. She's trying to throw as much on him, and it turned into this weird where they were recording each other and trying to catch, you know, she was trying to catch him and painting a certain picture because they probably knew this was going to become a thing, a court case, maybe not as public as they had thought. Right. But, they're trying to portray him in a certain way, like with the cupboard door slamming and getting upset. And there was one clip. I mean, there's so many clips that we could play and we only have so much time. But even, you know, he's trying to restrain her from hitting him. I watched that one and he's like, you know, like this. And then so finally he ends up, you know, grabbing her and just hugging her to try and restrain her from hitting. And then, you know, she's flailing around and they bumped heads. And then, you know, she leaves the room and then comes back and accuses him and records that you broke my nose. And so he reacts, you know, like out of care, like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm sorry, you know, but he was just trying to restrain her. So she took that moment to leave and come back. But he was suspicious because she's been pulling these kinds of things on him. So once she threw the tissue away, he examined it and it was nail polish. So she went and put red nail polish on Kleenex and was,
which is why I say that she's a sociopath, and I'll tell you why. That's exactly why I said so. Because she tried to ruin his reputation by utilizing the Me Too movement, so to speak, and women, domestic violence against women. So she tried to crowdsource hate against this man.
Yeah.
And she succeeded. Dangerous.
Yeah.
That's a sociopath, for sure. That is.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's not proven, which is why they went with the HPD and the BPD diagnosis. Right? Because as long as it's not proven that this is what this trial is for, really, the destruction of his reputation, making him lose business and stuff like that, that is a punishment mechanism that she decided that she was going to go down that path. And I want people who are listening to this, when you see these kinds of things happening, you are dealing with a dangerous individual, very dangerous. And as for the nail polish, you remember that video we watched? You locked the door, but the sociopath went and unlocked the door and is telling you that you left the door unlocked. That nail polish tactic was trying to elicit guilt from him to move him off center. But I want to just allude here to a more spiritual outlook on this.
Please do.
Yeah, I thought you might like that. Right, so I want to look for a more spiritual outlook. Let's say that you're in a relationship with somebody. The purpose of being in a relationship with somebody is a twofold process. It brings you joy, yes, but a relationship is about give and take, and a relationship is about growing. Okay? It's about growing. So that person makes you grow and makes you want to be a better person. Theoretically, that person should want to make you grow and want to be a better person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That would be the opposite right there.
Yeah.
Okay. So spiritually speaking, what she is trying to do from just a spiritual perspective, if you are in your joy and you're in a state of peace, what persons who are twisted inside will do was try to move you off center.
Mm-hmm. Keep you in a state of chaos and yeah.
Yeah, so he's talking about trying to detox. It's not in her favor for him to detox. It's not in the favor of somebody who has HPD or BPD for you to be happy, for you to be supported, for you to have friends or any of that stuff. They need to keep you off center, because when you're off center, you're sad, you're hurt or whatever else, and you're always in a state of tension, then you can be exploited. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Ironically enough, that's exactly what we think demon possession works like.
Mm-hmm.
Demons only possess people, but apparently this is like people possessing people, right? One, it is that you're in a state of despair, and when you're at the bottom of the barrel and you're on the ground, is where people like that want you.
Yeah.
So anything that gives you joy, anything that will bring you back to center, back to your internal awareness of self, they're going to try to take it out.
Yeah.
So if you have a good friend, like Lady and I are friends, right? If Lady had a sociopath boyfriend, by the way, Lady's boyfriend is probably one of the best men I've met in like what my life. Right?
Yeah, he's pretty special.
Yeah, he is. Right. Lady's boyfriend is one of the best men I have ever met in my life. But if she was involved with the sociopath, seeing us sitting here,
would be crawling out of his skin, and that this wouldn't be happening.
Yes. And you would not have 10 fingers.
Oh,
Right?
possibly not, or maybe a toe missing.
This is what we mean, because she's doing what she likes to do. She likes to teach and educate people and so on, and help people. This is what Lainey loves. But I'm going to tell you that if she was involved with somebody who's a sociopath or a psychopath, they would try to break that down into pieces, right? Stop her from doing that, because her clients and so on would be giving her some sort of gratification. Okay. And so what it is that you're involved with somebody that keeps stealing and taking away your joy, trying to break it, trying to break any kind of happiness you have, it doesn't matter. You don't need a diagnosis for this. You know that person has a problem.
Yeah.
They're not trying to increase your joy. They're trying to break it down.
And they do it in very sneaky ways where they make it sound like they're protecting you, or they just want the best for you. And having anyone other than them, this isn't good for you. You know, like your focus should be on them. And if you should quit your job, you should be only with me. You shouldn't, your family, they'll make little comments, about how your family's dysfunctional, or, like, oh, your mom or your dad, there's something off with them. They're trying to control you. They'll paint the other people in your life as if they're the ones that are the enemy, even though you've known these people your whole life, and you rationalize and you think, well, no, but then they get into that part of your heart where you think, oh, that loving, that wanting to be protected, and they take advantage of that and then turn everyone but themselves into an enemy, when indeed they're the ones who are wanting that control. So they cut you off from, making an income. There's so many different ways that they try to have this control. It's just sad. And they can do it in such a sneaky way that you think that they're saving you.
So what we saw in those recordings is a kind of layered approach, very sneaky layered approach. And I will explain to you what I mean by that. So she was conditioning him like you condition a dog. You say, come, sit. Dog, come, sit. Then you set up a reward and punishment system. And that's what she was doing. She was dog training a man. And I have actually seen, and I'm not only going to talk on the women's side, we're talking about it because we're trying to be fair. Men do that to women, and women certainly do that to men. I have seen women do that to men. I've seen men make their entire identity surround a woman to the point where when she leaves them, they want to commit suicide. They threaten suicide. Okay? Because they can't live without this individual and so on. So there's an element of codependency that goes there, which is not cool. And we need to, well, codependency is a whole different broadcast. We need to probably do that. But you could see it in here. He has alcohol and drug dependency. And if she was a good person inside, her main focus would be trying to get him to stop the drugs. So if he says he needs time to stop the drugs, then leave him alone. But I don't think it was in her interest for him to stop the drugs. I think it was in her interest for him to remain unstable and destabilized. And I think that this whole situation is extremely messy. There is no spiritual growth here. Okay?
No.
Now, both Lady and I come from backgrounds which are spiritual. We both are metaphysically inclined people. It is intolerable to be in a relationship with somebody who drags your spirit down.
Yeah.
Okay? That takes away your joy. It is something that is intolerable. And nobody should have to go through that kind of stuff. So what we want to do is implore the people who are watching this broadcast, watch the relationships. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, we're talking about a love relationship here, but it might be your friends, it might be your family member that are just dragging you down. Dragging you down. Just this morning, I dealt with a case of a family. Some mothers can't let their children go. Yeah, Lady wouldn't be one of them. Some mothers can't let their children go. So what they do is they cripple their children in terms of the dependency on them.
Yeah, it's another, oh, what is that called? Codependency relationship. Right?
Yes, but the way they go about it, it's really, really bad. So even mothers can have a fear of abandonment and have borderline personality disorder. They don't want their children leaving them. So they cripple them in different ways. They cripple them socially. They cripple them in their relationships, in their love relationships, by destroying every love relationship that they have. They steer them away from having meaningful relationships with people. And if you see parents acting like that, it's because they don't want to lose their kids.
Right.
And it's and you're probably saying, well, David, nobody wants their kids to grow up and leave them. But that's part of life.
It's wanting to see them succeed. There's a certain joy if someone that's in that situation, like what you were talking about this morning, it's that fear of change. It's a fear of
being alone as well.
Being alone, right? Having to be with yourself. And that's what a lot of people who have that loss of the sense of self, their identity is outside of themselves in a relationship or in their children. And that is who they are. And if that's being taken away, they don't know how to function with themselves. They haven't really had to be alone or gone inside of themselves. So it becomes this panic of, like even with everything in this past 2 years, we were isolated and whatnot. And a lot of people panicked. They panicked because they had to be alone. They couldn't keep busy. They couldn't go out. They couldn't have a social life. They had to live with themselves, right?
Agreed.
So it becomes this stress to have to face yourself. And if you're not used to facing yourself or being by yourself, then you're going to grasp. You're going to grasp to keep these things that are your identity, rather than your identity being inside of yourself, with yourself. So like with the mom that's having trouble letting go of a child, I know some moms that are like, I cannot wait, right, for my children to go out the door, right? Because, and I'm not going to say that's someone who's like more in tune with themselves, but possibly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like someone that's looking forward to that alone time. So yeah, sorry, I lost my thought.
No, it's okay. I think that people with BPD, which is the diagnosis that was given there, they don't like to be abandoned, and it can be extremely stressful to the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be that kind of person that is sticking to you like glue everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Okay, that will be that kind of person.
And you can't even leave the room.
Yes.
Right?
Like,
that's very extreme.
Yeah.
And then the whole, like you said, like, I don't even know the psychology behind pooping on someone's bed. I don't even
know
that would make. Like that
when I heard that, there's some there's something that we cringed. Can you imagine going out into the world? You want to have a meaningful relationship, and you end up with somebody who poops on your bed.
Yeah, I really can't imagine that. I just can't.
Look on your face right now, lady.
I don't know.
The look on your face right now is priceless.
It's so, like, I think I
cringe.
had a dog
cringy.
poop on my bed once.
You did?
Yes.
Did you burn the bed?
No.
I would have burned the bed. So you
but that was okay. The psychology, or if a dog can have psychology, but the reason behind it pooping on my bed in specific was because I had scolded it. So when I scolded the dog, I can't remember even what it did. It was a beagle, and beagles are very feisty like that. They're very vengeful little creatures, the beagle. And it was my daughter's dog, and I can't remember, it got in the garbage. I can't even remember what it was. And I scolded it, and its response was to go pee and poop on my bed. So maybe there is some insight there if you compare it.
Very primal.
Very primal, which is what we were talking about before, how people that are in this, they're stuck in that root chakra, right? In the animal instincts.
In the animal
that
instinct.
does definitely play in, and it actually kind of makes sense. I think we just figured it out.
I think I'll explain to you. And the other diagnosis that was given was histrionic. Look at me, everybody. Look at me. Pay attention to me. That's what histrionic personality disorder is. So people who are like that are usually overtly sexual people, because sex is a way of gaining attention. Go figure. If you're a woman and you have it, sex is a way of getting attention from men by being overtly sexual. I'm ever so sexy. Okay? And then you realize, because it's a self-defeating trait, because once that individual does have sex with you, you become ultimately less interesting. Okay? Because if you lead with the sex first, that's what you're selling, that's what they're buying.
Right.
They're not buying a personality, they're buying the sex. But I meet women in their 60s who are still doing that. They haven't figured it out yet. There are women in their 60s who are still doing that. Like, that's something that you do in your 20s and 30s, right? That's not something that you get past out of your 20s and 30s and you're still doing. So a lot of women lead with the sex because they think that's what would garner their interest, so they're overtly sexual. If you have histrionic personality disorder, sex becomes your go-to, for a lot of women, becomes your go-to things, and men too. It's not just a women thing. And it works in the short term until the individual actually has sex with you, and then you get into the BPD stage. You see how things cycle back?
The BPD
Because-
being,
Borderline personality disorder.
Right.
And I'll explain how that works in terms of a cycle, a vicious cycle. You have histrionic personality disorder. So you do stupid things to gain attention. Like, I don't know, expose your body, walk around naked, post naked pictures of yourself on the internet. You do stupid things to gain attention. Had to go there, right? You do stupid things to gain attention. And people think, oh, she's so hot. They have sex with you, and then you become less interesting. And that happens once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. And you develop BPD because you're afraid of being abandoned by these men that are sleeping with you, and you haven't realized and figured out what you are doing wrong.
right,
Do you see how it cycles back?
yeah. Yeah,
And this is basically, and you lead yourself into all sorts of things, which is why I said in the broadcast that sociopaths are born and made. They make themselves as well because of stupid things that they do.
mm-hmm.
They do stupid
Where
things.
where the attention seeking turns into abandonment issues.
Correct, because people won't stick around because you are acting irregular, like pooping on their bed, as an example, which is like, I've actually never heard this before. This is new for me. And Lainey, you pointed me to this particular case, and I researched it, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty out there. Like, I really feel for how public this is, right? That's another, I don't know why it has been decided to be publicly. I think probably for his reputation. He's probably trying to, regain that reputation that's what spewed all this, because she was using that. That was probably a threat of hers going on, that she would do this, and then she did.
I think what has happened is that she destroyed his reputation, and what he's just trying to do is fix it, because he wouldn't have been allowed to fix it if he had continued in a relationship with her. So I think what he's trying to do is fix it. So that's why it has gone public. And I think it's it must really suck to be her. Well, actually, no, it doesn't, because that would require her to understand the concept of the word suck. So I think it must really suck to be her. I mean, we can't analyze what she may be going through, but I can pretty much tell you from what we are seeing and the look, it's not a good look.
No. And I mean, and he's pretty much he's allowing his flaws to be put out there too. He's actually putting this in the public eye has brought to attention his inner demons, so to speak, right? But he's willing to do that because she has taken so much. He's virtually at the point where he's been stripped naked of everything and really doesn't care anymore. He's at the point where, it doesn't matter. She said whatever. So if she posts a video of me slamming cupboard doors or saying, really mean things, his hands are thrown up. He's just like, whatever, it is what it is. I just want it over with. I just want this out there so people can know it all and know, that, and again, like we said at the beginning, like men can be in abusive relationships too.
Yeah.
And nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. How do you handle a situation like that without slamming a cupboard door or saying something in retaliation? You're just supposed to sit there and be like, okay, like, hit me. Don't, I won't leave the room. I won't try and get away from you. I won't, like, put yourself in that situation. Like, how do you escape that without being human and acting out in some way?
Honestly, Lainey, my major fear out of this whole trial that is going on is that it's going to be more difficult for people to believe women who are genuinely abused when they speak out. It's done a disservice to women in general, because this woman is not an atypical abused woman. She is definitely participated in abuse. There would have been abuse on both sides, whether verbal or emotional abuse, because for her, him walking away is an emotional abuse to her because she has BPD, okay? And there are people who genuinely have avoidance issues and they walk away and they stamp out or whatever. I don't think he was doing that, however. So my major problem with this is that it has done a disservice to women who are genuinely in situations where they're being abused. And it's going to be more difficult. They're going to be looked at in more scrutiny because that case that you're seeing is setting a precedent throughout the United States.
Yeah.
Because of its publicity. It's setting a precedent throughout the United States. The other thing that has happened, and I alluded to it early on, is the whole Will Smith,
Chris Rock, I think it was.
Yeah, his wife.
Jada.
Jada Pinkett, right.
I can't believe I remembered that.
Yeah.
I'm not very good with celebrity names.
Yeah, neither am I. I don't actually watch but the fact that that's another toxic relationship. So it's not putting a good light on women in relationships. It really isn't. And that case is setting a precedent which will harm women. It will. You can bet that, because the testimony that is being brought out here is going to spark a rash of these cases where women will be under further scrutiny. And can I tell you, because I have had to escort women to court to testify against men who were abusive to them, putting a woman on a stand and cross-examining her under these conditions is very painful because lawyers have no mercy. And once again, a lawyer named Rottenborn, seriously, it's like a Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Like, that's actually a villainous name, Rottenborn.
Yeah, kind of.
So anyways, unusual. That's the way you put that, right? So
unusual.
Yeah, it's unusual, right? So I just think that this case may do a disservice to people on the whole, and it's really sad that it came to this, and it's so public and it's so it's not good. So I want you guys to let us know what you think in the comments below. Lainey, I'm going to let you have the last word here.
Yeah, and I think as much as, like I said in the beginning, it draws to attention to men are in this situation, but I can't say that word. Statistically, women are the ones who are more in an abusive relationship because we're the nurturers, right? We're someone who, we have the motherly instinct. We want to fix things. So technically, usually it is more the majority, but then again, a lot of men don't come out with abuse either.
There's no, so you don't have to be tongue-in-cheek with regard to that. There's a reason why men are more statistically likely to abuse women than women are to abuse men, because in our societies based on patriarchal constructs,
right?
So women are taught to be more gentle in the way they approach men, okay? And men are taught to be this strong, testosterone-filled individual. And so because of that, based on cultural acculturation, I should say, men are more statistically likely to abuse women than women are to abuse men. Okay. Having said that, times are changing. Women are bringing out the clubs and the cleavers.
And the logs. Sorry, I had to.
Logs. I just got that. I just got that. That was a good one. Right? So women are bringing bringing out all sorts of things and bashing men with that. And I guess that's part of what we call equality. Well,
Sure.
equality in good things, equality in bad things, lady. Well, that's what I have to say.
So I think it was good that we drew attention to this. Like I said at the outset, we want to be focusing on ourselves because the root issue of this is doing that self-healing, or exploring who we really are and having that self-identity. So these kinds of mental illnesses or disorders or personality disorders aren't coming out. We're not identifying ourselves through drugs or alcohol or an individual or a toxic relationship. Doing that, like you were talking about the gun and controlling our triggers, right? We're our own gun. We control our triggers. So just because something outside of us is having an influence on us in a certain way, we're the ones who are in control. So taking anything from tonight is, as public as this is, and as ugly as this is, and unbelievable some of this is, take a lesson from it in one, looking at the triggers, the signs, identifying what manipulation is, identifying what gaslighting is, identifying those kinds of things so we can protect ourselves. But then also, like I said, the root of it is doing that inner work, going inside and healing those wounds and loving yourself and healing so that you're not using things outside of yourself, whether it's a child or a partner or a workaholic or an alcoholic or, all of these things that we use to fill these holes of emptiness because we really don't know ourselves. Get to know yourself to avoid that.
Agreed. Agreed. There is a spiritual component to this, which involves you learning to evolve in your own self and paying attention to yourself. And if you suspect you have any one of those disorders yourself and you're listening to this broadcast, please, we beseech you to get some help. And please understand that you bear a responsibility to other people's lives to not toxify their lives. So if we got through to you in any way, shape, or form, please consider what Lainey has just said. And I suppose that's it for us tonight.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be here in person.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is kind of cool.
Instead of
We should
little
do this
squares.
more often.
Yeah. I feel comfortable. I put a picture frame here. So I'm still in my box.
All right, guys, we're going to talk to you.
Go now.
We're going to go now. Take care, guys.
Okay, thanks again, guys.
Bye-bye.
Good night.